What about Bruiser Brody? What are your memories on Bruiser?
Well, when you try to pick the toughest guy of all times in wrestling, you have to pick Bruiser Brody. He run a Mexican American gang for 10 years down in San Antonio before he got into wrestling, right? And a friend of his, Ivan Pussy, got into him, right? He was a natural athlete, had a mean streak in him, right? It always had to go Bruiser Brody's way. And I know he was over in Japan, and there was a rule over there: you got fired if you went into the Japanese dressing room. Well, they beat Jimmy Snuka for no reason one night, and I don't know what his idea was, but he threw his stuff down, went to the Japanese dressing room and said, I can whip anybody in here, and if you ever beat Jimmy Snuka again, I'm going to beat the hell out of you. And say, tell Inoki had already left, tell Inoki that, right? And say, Inoki, you'll never beat me. And Inoki, I've heard, all the way up to $150,000 if Bruiser Brody would put him over for an angle. He said, I never will.
Wow.
That's how tough he was. And unfortunately, we all know he got knifed and killed. And it's a great loss for us because he was a tough guy. And again, maybe if he'd been different, he wouldn't be. But Bruiser Brody had to be Bruiser Brody.
What are your thoughts on the tragedy of him getting stabbed by Jose Gonzalez, which we just talked about?
Well, I understand. I don't know the real truth, but I understand it was either money they owed him or Bruiser Brody was going to take over part of the territory. I don't know what is the true story. I know they owed him money. I don't know about him taking the territory over, but it was one of the great shocks of wrestling.
Without a doubt. Ole Anderson. What are your memories of Ole Anderson?
Ole Anderson, in reality, is one of the most super honest guys in the world. Greatest booker, I believe. Maybe Tom and Nestor was better, but greatest booker. He knew how to handle the boys. His only thing was, he said, if I knew... Ole made most of the champions. If he wanted a guy the world champion, that's who became the world champion. If he wanted him pushed in his territory, that's who got pushed. And all I can say is, Ole Anderson hired me 5 times, fired me 5 times. And I said to him, you're the only guy I could say I should have been fired all 5 times. And he said, I didn't want to do it. He said, but you were such a mess up. But he said, I always took you back.
Memories teaming up with Scandor Akbar.
Akbar was one of it was funny. He wanted to be a great wrestler, had super strength, by the way. Danny Hodge claims to me that Akbar was the strongest guy he ever met in his life. Never was a great wrestler, but when he became a manager, I think you got to put him in the top 5 or 6 of all time. Something about him managing where he didn't have to do the wrestling part. Great manager.
What about John Studd? You became his tag team partner. What are your memories teaming up with John?
Well, John Studd was, like I said before, John Studd was jealous of anybody else in the world that was getting pushed. John Studd was big and strong, right? And if you check, he never won a belt in his whole career. He wanted to win a little bit, but he never had that right attitude. And he made a lot of money because he was in Charlotte, and I think Blackjack Mulligan left, and he fit his boots right there. When Blackjack Mulligan went up to New York, Studd followed him up there, and Andre wanted to work a 2-year program with anybody who could slam who.
Right.
Well,
body slam thing.
Okay. For some reason or another, Blackjack Mulligan didn't want to do that. Because Mulligan, I want to say one thing. If you had a fight between Bruiser Brody and Blackjack Mulligan, I couldn't tell you who'd be the winner. I know you'd see an interesting fight because, as you know, Blackjack, a lot of guys, he just didn't argue with him, he just knocked him out.
Wow.
It was a shame he was supposed to have been here, this show here. I don't know the reason he didn't come, but it was a great disappointment.
Yeah, they said he had a stroke this weekend.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
He had what?
He had a stroke last weekend, they're saying.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So
Always was a nice guy to me, you know. We went over to Japan together. He was a great friend of a guy called Larry Henning up in Minneapolis, and I think Larry Henning helped him get into business. And Larry Henning could go in that class with Bruiser Brody and Blackjack Hall. He was super tough.
did you ever work for Verne Gagne at all?
Verne Gagne is like a lot of the promoters. They had a rule. Everybody did it, but Eddie Graham in Florida. You couldn't touch their son. You couldn't beat their son, right? One night in Chicago, in a show with Jim Menzel, Greg, for some reason, jumped in the ring without taking his shirt off. Because the signal in wrestling, you always take your shirt off because I know you're around. Didn't have your shirt on, right?
Right.
I was scared to death, so I turned around and knocked him out. Right? As he's laying there, they know that it's Verne's the boss. They wanted to carry him back to the dressing room, so they put a stretcher there. With my reputation being big, mean, and ugly, I tipped the stretcher over. Verne Gagne yelled from the back, "You mother effer!" Right?
Right.
Well, at the time, he was fired automatic if you called him Baldy. So I said, "Let Baldy up in here, because I want that world title." The one match that I had with Verne Gagne, we drew the biggest house in the history of the amphitheater. You know, and,
Right.
That was the only match I had with him because, unbeknownst to men, he was going to retire a week later and give Nick Bockwinkel the world belt. And never worked. He had the biggest house in the history of the amphitheater. He didn't want to work a return, which he should have worked 5 or 6 with me. Didn't want to work one because he wanted to retire for Nick Bockwinkel.
Wow. You worked for a lot of outlaw companies early on. What are your memories of working for some of the outlaw companies?
I don't know who you're referring to as Outlaw. You have some names?
I don't have any names. I was just talking about other, like, I wouldn't say indie companies, but I'm not talking about like any of the main territories like Georgia or Florida. I'm just talking about like maybe indies or something.
Okay. After Vince got to be super powerful, right? There was only 3 or 4 other territories like the IWA, little territory, which were never big, right?
Right.
Okay. At the time, like I said, Vince wouldn't use me in New York.
Why was that?
Because early in Hulk Hogan's career, me and Superstar Billy Graham made fun of him because he couldn't wrestle, and we blew him up where he couldn't breathe.
Right.
We said, "Get up, you big tough! See how tough you are." For some reason or other, when he got to the WWE, he didn't care if Superstar was there, but he didn't want Oxbaker there.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.